apparently somebody just lost $295,000 betting on the collapse of First Republic Bank, and they were right, but they're still losing their money. Now, if you have any common sense right about now, you're probably thinking, well, he must have done something wrong, because if you can bet on something happening and you're right, and that means you should have made money and you end up losing money, you must have done something severely wrong, and you would be absolutely correct about that. So let's take a look at exactly what this guy did. Recently posted on the subreddit Wall Street Bets, this guy JoshBone12 posted his story about suing Robinhood for $295,000 because they would not allow him to exercise his FRC puts. So $295,000, as we'll see, is the total amount that he should have made. This wasn't the total amount that he initially invested into this bet. So step one, he says, 1 week ago, I reached out of Robinhood to inquire if I could cash out or exercise my puts if FRC is suspended. Now, here's the first problem right off the bat. This is the problem with Robinhood and some of these apps that have recently started to try and gamify options or turn it into gambling. It says if I could cash out my puts. This isn't, you're not cashing them out. Exercising them, it does not mean, this is not sports betting. These are financial instruments. These are derivatives. And so you're not cashing out anything here. This is a legal contract that gives you the right to do something should the conditions persist. And so with a put, you have the right to sell the stock. That has nothing to do with profitability or unprofitability or cashing out. And so this is one of the reasons why I severely dislike using Robinhood and them as a company, because they just throw this garbage in here that makes people have a big misunderstanding of what's actually going on behind the scenes that leads them to situations like this where they lose money. But let's go on. So he says, I was assured in writing that I would be able to exercise my in the money puts into a short position in the scenario that FRC is suspended. So exhibit 1 here, he shows a screenshot where he's asking their support about what would happen in this case. This is red flag number 2. If the only access you have to support is through texting, through a chat system where you have to wait for them to respond, this is a big red flag. You don't want to be playing with money. You don't want to be doing any investing or any trading somewhere where that's the only support you have. You want 24/7 access to call somebody in the middle of the night, on a weekend, on a holiday, and know that you're going to talk to a licensed broker. That's just preposterous to be doing something like this, especially if you have any amount of money that is significant to you that you could be losing. Exhibit number 2 looks like whoever the representative is on the other end is telling him that if he was to exercise, that he would end up being short a few thousand shares based on the number of contracts of FRC puts that he has, and that in the event of a halt, it'd be hard to cover those shares because the shares are halted. And here's a screenshot of the positions that he had on First Republic Bank, which shows that he has multiple strike prices of puts on First Republic Bank. Now, I need to point out red flag number 3 about the way that these positions are listed on Robinhood. I personally don't trade options there, but it says 379 buys, 94 buys, 3 buys, and these are puts. This is one of the stupidest things that I've ever seen, especially from a company that is pushing out financial instruments that are complex to retail investors that don't know what they're doing here. Why are they saying there are 379 buys? What's actually going on here is this client is long a certain number of contracts that are puts. Putting the word buys in there just distorts the whole thing. I imagine in their effort is to try and simplify options trading. But when you do that, what you end up doing is you end up confusing the people about what's actually going on. And so instead of saying, hey, you're long or short this contract, like a put or a call, they're saying words like you have 379 buys, or I would imagine if you were short a contract, they would say 379 sells, which is just changing the language that nobody else uses. And so you won't ever be able to advance your education with options trading because you'll get this foundation that is just completely garbled and messed up and has no relation to what everybody else is doing. And you get into situations like this guy where you lose 300 grand. He then goes on to say that he reached out to support again to confirm what they had already told him, that he would be able to exercise his options by entering a short position. And then they responded by saying that he may be able to exercise, but as of now, they don't allow short sales. And here's the screenshot of that part of the conversation where they say you still may be able to, but not currently, not until more info is known. And down at the bottom, we cannot exercise and sell short as of yet. So this is red flag number 5. I lost count at this point, that when you're talking to a representative, it's very clear they have no idea how to trade options or what's going on here, because the first representative told them that he would be able to exercise, and now the second representative is saying that he may be able to, and has clearly no understanding that those contracts are expiring soon, and mentions that you have to wait until a system-wide decision is made by Robinhood to allow short selling. It's like, well, the contracts are expiring, so that doesn't help me right now, and currently the shares are halted from trading, and so that still doesn't answer the current question of whether I can exercise or not. Now, looking into Robinhood's website, you can see that the second representative was correct. Robinhood Financial does not allow you to short a stock, but it's on this page where they're talking about how to short and what shorting is. They do say that it is a strategy worth knowing about. This is another huge red flag here with Robinhood. You're trading complex derivatives that give you either the right or the obligation. Like if he would have sold calls here, he would have the obligation to sell the shares. And if he doesn't have those shares to cover, then how are you going to be able to let individuals trade these complex derivatives, which carry the right to do something that you don't allow them to even do? If your eyes are glazing over here because you don't know anything about options, don't worry, I'm going to explain it very simply here, exactly what's going on here with these puts. Puts and calls are option contracts. A contract will give the buyer the right to do something and the seller of that contract an obligation to do something. Contracts all have an expiration date, and so calls and puts also have expiration dates. With a put specifically, like we're dealing with here, if you buy a put, you have the right to sell a stock. If you are the one who sells that put to the buyer of the put, you are going to take on the obligation to buy that stock. And so a put is simply an agreement between two people that if a certain condition happens, then person number one will sell their shares to person number two. Puts are normally purchased for one of two reasons. The first reason is protection. If I own a bunch of shares of a stock and I'm scared they're gonna fall, I'm gonna buy puts as insurance on those shares. That way, if the shares do fall in price, I have the right to sell those shares to somebody else at the price stated in the contract. This individual's puts on First Republic Bank have prices that he can sell the shares at of $6.50, $5, and $5.50. The second reason I would buy a put is for speculative purposes. I don't own the shares, but I think that those shares are gonna drop. So even though I don't have the shares and I don't need these puts to protect me against anything, I'm gonna buy those puts anyway, because if the stock does fall in value, then those puts are gonna be worth a lot more, and then I'll be able to profit off of that. Now, it is worth mentioning here that I have, and I am biased here in saying this, obviously, I have the world's best course on professional options trading strategies. My membership program, Heresy Financial University, I have a lot of courses, including an options mastery program for professional strategies, where I teach you the professional strategies that the pros use, not retail individuals, how to make sure that you're not losing money and getting yourself into stupid mistakes like this individual did. My background is as an options trader, as a stockbroker. I trained other brokers who went on to trade options in their clients' portfolios. And so I brought all that information into this course, condensed it for you. So if you're interested, I do recommend starting there before you ever get into trading options. But if you do have any experience trading options, you're probably thinking, well, why in the world was he trying to exercise here? Because if you buy a put, you can just sell that put. You don't have to keep it and you don't have to exercise. You have the right to exercise, not the obligation. But if you'll notice here, everything he was trying to do was to exercise the puts so that he could get into a short position on the stock, meaning he wanted to short sell those shares because he had the puts, so he wanted to exercise them so he'd be able to sell the shares, which he didn't own. So he would have to borrow those shares to sell them so that he could profit off of those shares going down in value even more. And this was, in my opinion, his second biggest mistake. His first biggest mistake was trading options at Robinhood to begin with. But his second biggest mistake was holding on to them and hoping he could exercise while the stock is halted from trading. That's not something Robinhood can control. How are you expecting that you're going to be able to enter into a position on the shares when there are no shares being traded? Just sell the puts, take your profits and walk away and go learn how to trade better and then go trade somewhere else. And if that confuses you how you could just sell those puts instead of exercising them, well, if I have a piece of paper, a contract that gives me the right to sell shares at $6 and the shares are actually right now worth $3, then that contract itself is going to be worth at least $3 because I could exercise it to make $3, so I could sell it to somebody else so that they could use it to make $3. And that's exactly how options work. Nobody holds these things until expiration. Very few people ever exercise. You just liquidate them prior to expiration. You take your gains or your losses and you walk away. But in the case where you do have to exercise, you're gonna wanna make sure you're trading somewhere that allows you to take full advantage of these complex derivatives that you're trading. Because in a very normal situation, imagine that you were trying to sell your puts because the stock had dropped a lot and it's still trading, and so you want to sell your puts, but the intrinsic value is, let's say, $5 because you could sell them up here. You could use your contract to sell the shares at 10, but the stock is trading for 5. So the intrinsic value of that contract is $5. But for whatever reason, let's say there's no volume on those options, you try and liquidate and maybe you can only get $4.50. Well, you're leaving 50 cents on the table there. So how do you get out of that? This is the advantage to trading somewhere like TD Ameritrade or E-Trade or Interactive Brokers or Fidelity or Charles Schwab. What you can do is you can call them and do a substitution sell. Essentially, you call them up and you can say, hey, I've got these contracts that are intrinsically worth $5, but right now, the bid and ask, there's a wide spread and there's no volume there. So if I try and sell it, I'm not going to be able to get the intrinsic value for it. And so I'd like to exercise, but I don't want to hold those shares, either long or short, in my account. I want to liquidate those shares immediately because maybe I don't even have the money to cover that large of a purchase or that large of a short sell. I just want to take my full profits that are there. And what they'll tell you is, fantastic. If you've got an account worth, let's say 100 grand, but an option position, if you exercise it, would be $1 million position, your account can't support that, but they'll do it for you anyway. They'll short the shares and then immediately exercise the contracts against it to deliver the purchase that lines up with the sale, and you'll get your full $5 profit there that was intrinsically there in the contract. They'll do it for you even though your account isn't big enough because they'll just match up the trades and line it up. Something you won't be able to do by text messaging your offshore representative at Robinhood. Now, to finish the story here, this individual says that he has already consulted a lawyer. He has the screenshots of the company representative saying that he would be able to get into a short position, even though Robinhood does not allow you to have a short position. And you can absolutely present a lawsuit against your broker if you've had financial losses in your account as a result of some wrongdoing on their end. I have no idea what the outcome of this lawsuit would be, but personally, my biggest recommendation here, if I was able to speak to this individual, would be number one, pull all your money out of Robinhood. It's a terrible company. They do not have retail investors at best interest. They are quite literally, especially in this case, stealing from retail, and those gains were kept by somebody, which is probably somebody on Wall Street. It's probably the market maker on the other side of that trade. They do not have your best interest at heart, so stop trading there. Go with one of the larger discount brokerage firms that has full-time staff of registered brokers that are actually trained in how to use options so that they can educate you and talk with you intelligently about the strategies that you're using and be able to help you when you have problems. If you're worried about the $4, the $5 commission on those options trades, then you probably shouldn't be trading options options anyway. And the second piece of advice that I would give is before you ever do any sort of an options trade, get educated about how they work. Get extremely comfortable with them. You'd never put a sharp chef's knife in the hand of a child and just say, go to town, start chopping up the veggies for dinner tonight. No, you have to start them off with teaching them how to use it. A chef's knife in the hand of a child, very dangerous. A chef's knife in the hand of a skilled chef, not dangerous at all. It's a very effective tool. Options are the exact same way. Once you learn how to use them, once you know what they are and you know how to do the strategies effectively and what strategies to avoid, then you won't get hurt. You'll be able to use them effectively and be able to use them to protect your wealth, to grow your wealth, to speculate while reducing your risk, and all sorts of other strategies that the pros use. And again, if you'd like to learn that from me, I've got my link in the description below. As always, really appreciate you guys. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.